According to the Duden Dictionary, a crisis is a difficult situation or time that represents the high and turning point of a dangerous development. Thus, the corona pandemic, the war in Ukraine, or even climate change can be classified as a crisis, as a time of danger, even if, for example, the climate crisis is unfortunately not yet really tangible for everyone. What is arts education? First, there is no binding definition. In 2016, in preparation for an international monitoring project, I asked experts from 16 countries and 5 continents about their understanding of arts education. The answers revealed country-specific differences in description, definition, and objective of arts education. However, the expert agreed upon that arts is the medium of arts education through reception, production, and reflection. Differences were seen in the focus on specific sectors or structures, for example, the anchoring within formal, non-formal, and informal education. Arts education could play an important role in education and learning in general, for the individual, and for the society. The focus on learning in general, here the concept of learning through the arts, is found primarily in the Anglo-American world. Here subjects such as mathematics, language, or natural science are learned by means of arts like music, dance, or visual arts. Arts education thus becomes a learning method which open up the world and factual content by creativity. From this perspective, the promotion of creativity and change of perspectives through arts education can be argumentatively traced back to the logic of the arts. The medium of arts education, the arts promote a conscious approach to rule breaking. There is no right or wrong, and thus a multidimensionality in observation. From this perspective, the benefit of arts education in crisis could be to make crises comprehensible in their dimensions and to develop creative methods of solving problems, for example, in the field of sustainability and environmental protection. In Germany, but also in many other European countries, the primary goal of arts education or culture education is seen in the strengthening and the empowerment of the individual. This includes both strengthening communication skills and developing one's own positions and attitudes as an essential basis for entering into negotiation processes with third parties. Thus, strengthening the individual could also make a concrete contribution to crisis management. So in the current professional discourse, the contribution of arts education to resilience is indeed increasingly discussed. In psychology, this refers to the process in which people react to problems and changes by adapting their behavior. However, with adaptability can also be critical questioned in terms of neoliberal tendencies. Is it good for humans to adapt to change, or might it better to question change and work to make that change fit compatible for public welfare? Take as an example a much praised arts education program, Sistema in Venezuela. This gives young people living in socially deprived areas the opportunity to play music in an orchestra. Individuals such as the musician Gustav Dudamel even launched their world career here. In a film about Sistema, a young girl says that she got into a shootout on the way to her Sistema orchestra, which is normal where she lives. But she would take this risk again and again because making music together is very important to her. Critical questions can be asked here as well. Is it okay to strengthen young people through arts education so that they can cope with difficult living conditions? Or would it not be fairer to first ensure that their living conditions get improved? Arts education can also focus on community empowerment by strengthening a community's cultural identity, for example, in the form of cultural heritage, everyday cultural rituals, or narratives. For example, in Europe culture's heritage is seen as a basis for common European identity. Furthermore, arts education can also promote the handling and recognition of cultural diversity, and thus also contribute to social cohesion. Bringing together different forms of culture expression is also seen as a creative engine for social development. In times of crisis, strengthening social cohesion can make an important contribution to jointly defying the adversities of a crisis. At the same time, however, cultural identity building measures can also be used to divide groups even more by building up a we feeling toward the other opposing party. The current war in Ukraine shows how important it is to maintain interpretive sovereignty over cultural narratives, cultural history, and information on the internet. At the same time, archives as analog sources are gaining importance for coming to terms with the past. So much for theory, but how do the arts and arts education deals with times of crisis in practical terms? In the pandemic, arts education produced powerful images and narratives. The balcony concerts, for example, were a symbol of solidarity in the pandemic crisis. In the Ukraine war, for example, it were YouTube videos like the girl playing the violin in a subway station where she was seeking shelter from bombardment. These images illustrate very concretely what arts education can do in time of crisis. On the one hand, the preoccupation with the arts creates a fictitious retreat of the mind for the individual. The individual appears strengthened by completely blocking out the actual dangerous real situation. Therefore, it creates an alternative stage after good glamour and normality of everyday life have been lost. The creation of an alternative stage also encourages, on the other hand, third parties to defy the misery of the crisis and send a signal, thus strengthening the sense of community. However, the examples show arts education for crisis management can only succeed if access to arts education has been created in previous normal times. The image of the Ukrainian girl with a violin in the subway shaft would not have been possible if she had not been given sufficient space and resources to learn this instrument in non-crisis times. But cultural participation, also a human right, is still not a matter of course in Germany, Europe, or worldwide. A large number of young people, especially from social disadvantaged contexts, do not have access to non-formal arts education to the same extent as the girl with her violin. For example, the chance to play an instrument, receive dance lessons, play theater, or practice creative writing. Another impressive example how important this may be in a crisis is the diary of Anne Frank. The moving diary in which Anne Frank wrote down her thoughts and experience has sensitized young people all over the world in a special way to the terrible experience of her time. So, in view of the current but especially the coming crisis, we should work to make arts education possible for all and not only rediscover the value of arts education in times of crisis. Crisis as well as social change demand openness, flexibility, and a change of perspective. First and foremost, question of culture shaping meaning and values are of particular importance. For example, in relation to new technology such as artistical intelligence. What are purely human skills? How do we want to use technical in the future? Or related to the pandemic, how do we deal with questions of solidarity? And how can we still enable social participation while taking the necessary protective measures? Arts education creates space for thinking and experimenting, as well as for developing one's own attitudes. At best, it also supports culture negotiation process in society. But until today, arts education is often national-oriented and often Western Anglo-American perspective dominate. In view of social change, however, we would need a European and global arts education in the future. In Germany, for example, European artists, writers and composers have only become present through refugee artists. Art, culture and cultural practice define our humanity. The books we read, the music we listen to, the songs we sing shape us. Investing more in contemporary European and global arts education could help to build bridges between different cultures' experience, identities, and praxis. Culture negotiation processes could thus take place at eye level. Thank you for your attention.